not shared something because you're worried it's a little too braggy? How are we supposed to promote our art if we're not allowed to talk about it?
Today on Honestly, Dear Listener, we're talking about bragging, pride, and sharing, and why we have a hard time doing it, and where the heck that comes from.
And we're also talking about Carrie's 40th birthday.
We're two childhood best friends talking about creative mindset.
I'm Emily Hatchery.
And I'm Carrie Chauffeur, and this is Honestly, Dear Listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!
Carrie has been overcoming adversity left and right. Tell them about it, Carrie.
I mean, yes. Okay, so last week, Emily and I were going to record. Guess what 2-hour time slot Xfinity decided to come over and change out a cable for our internet? Yeah, it was that 2-hour time slot. It was. And so we were like, okay, no. We're going to record that night. And then guess what happens? There's a meeting for my son's dance studio that I have to make it to that I didn't know about. So we had to scrap that idea. And then this week, I'm doing a little I'm 40 now. Happy birthday to me retreat.
Happy birthday
up
to you.
in the hills. The freaking power shuts down.
Literally a half hour before we were supposed to record again.
So I'm over here going, hey, Emily, if you are part of a Truman Show-esque scenario of my life, which feels really self-focused, like, of course, I'm the protagonist of this story, this grand plan. Emily, I need you to tell me now. And of course she can't because she's part of the Truman Show. So she's like, dude, I don't know what's happening. And so here we are. The power has been restored. You know, this is actually pushing us more towards commitment to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The universe is like, I'm going to get him to stop recording and stop putting out this podcast. And we're like, joke's on you, universe. We are even more married to this idea.
See, okay. As most of you know, if you've been listening, we were both raised in like a really crazy, charismatic Pentecostal church. And it used to be that like if things were coming up against you, basically, is what they would say, that it was an attack because the devil didn't want you to do a thing. But this is like actually feeling like that. Also, speaking of the Truman Show, if we're both taking some self-centered approach to this, mine was, I would think that Carrie is just trying to like quietly quit and be like, oh no, again, I can't do it. I mean, you are a writer and you love telling stories. So it could be my self-centered thing is that you've created a series of stories that will lead to your inevitable quitting.
So what then, that I would make it so hard to put out episodes that eventually I force you to quit because you're like, I'm gonna call this.
Or like, you're going to be like, oh my God, my life is just too crazy, Emily. As you've seen, like I haven't even been able to, whatever. So I'm going to have to quit doing this. You finally decide there's something that you really feel passionately about, but your friend's like, I'm done doing it. And now you have to figure it out again.
Emily, I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon.
Me neither. I feel like you're stuck with me.
Super stuck with me.
Yay! And guess what, listener? As long as you're here with us, you're stuck with us too. We skated by something pretty important. You turned 40.
Oh my gosh, I did.
Which means you're way older than me because I don't turn 40 till next month.
Well, I am the matriarch of this group. of the two of us. I am matriarch. Mattress. Nope, that's something else. Matriarching over us. So
matriarching. I like that. Is that Swedish?
It's just a little bit of everything all rolled into one. So I'm 40.
Yes, bitch. Shut up. Okay. So
Yeah.
40.
Yeah, so I'm
And
40, I made it. I did it, I
you
survived.
level 40, you have arrived.
Yes, I have.
And so I want you to fill us in on
Mhm.
we've talked a lot about my show shit and all that stuff happening. We haven't talked a lot about what you've been up to these days. We've had a couple of little nuggets, but I want to let's talk about what 40 looks like and what are you doing?
Well,
Fabulous 40.
people keep asking me, "What do you wanna do for your 40th birthday?" And the best, most honest, most beautiful answer I could think of was, I want to be somewhere by myself in nature, and I wanna read and write the entire time. And I want that. And I have friends that live alone that are like, "Why would you want to do that? That sounds terrible." And I'm like, "Because I'm never ever alone. I have a little person hanging off of me, or I have people talking, whatever it is." So I wanted to be alone. So my friend who knows me well enough to know that I talk a lot about things that I want to do, but it really is kind of an effort for me to do them, was like, I know what she's going to do. She's going to talk about getting an Airbnb, and then 40 is going to roll by and she's not going to do it. So my dear friend, Rachel, she's been on the podcast before. Hi, Rach.
Hi.
She took an afternoon and came up with a list of Airbnb places that fit the bill of what I was looking for. And she was like, "Here you go. Here's a list. Pick one." So I sure did. I cried because I was like, "That's love." And then I picked one and then I paid for it. And then here I am. And I would not be up here if it wasn't for her. So
Hmm.
here I am. So, what I have been feeling like with 40 is I want to even more legitimize and invest in the things that I am doing and making and creating. I feel like I've kind of been looking back on the different decades of my life. I feel like when I was 10, I hid in the bathroom on the last day of school because a boy told me that he liked me. And I was like, I didn't even know this was an option for me. So I feel like the tens for me were about understanding that falling in love was possible. Then in my 20s, I fell in love with my husband. I was 20. And then I turned 30 smack in the middle between having my 2 kids. And so I kind of feel like decades are different layers of falling in love,
Hmm.
maybe. And I want my 40s to be about falling in love with myself and my art. And
Hmm.
that's what I want the focus to be. So I had this realization. I was like, I want to write, and I want to write every day. So I got online and I found a printable calendar and I printed it out and I stuck it up to my studio wall. And I just write my word counts for the day for every day. And it's been amazing. I have created a Substack, which is kind of like social media, but better because it has like a writing, publishing, art, literature, poetry focus. And so
Mm.
I'm writing on that, carrieschafer.substack.com. You can find it in the show notes, the link to the Substack. So that's exciting. And I've been working on my book. I've been writing on Substack at the very least every week. And what's so cool too about Substack that I love more than anything probably is that it allows you to narrate your stuff. So for every single post that I do, I narrate the whole thing. If you don't want to read something, you can hear me read it to you, which
Which is
I
my favorite.
love.
That's my
I
favorite.
love it. It's so fun.
You guys have to check it out. In fact, um, Carrie, will you play one of them so that they can hear it? Because you guys, I literally cried about it. Like the first few that I heard, I can't get over it. And I want you to hear it. Would you play one?
It would be my pleasure. Insert audio here. Licking Ourselves Up Off the Floor on Radical Self Love by Carrie Schaefer. In my life coaching practice, I talk with my clients specifically about self acceptance and self esteem. Except I don't love these words. I only use them because they get both of us in the right neighborhood. But once we're in that neighborhood, I always suggest we ditch these terms. They're not freaky enough. The word acceptance sounds like we're merely tolerating ourselves. Here are a few things I accept. I accept that my Amazon packages are indeed lost, I will never get them back, and that I'm now out $40. I accept that she doesn't want to be my friend because I casually dropped the line, "I'm lonely," mid-convo to a complete stranger, and now she's just weirded out. I accept that I queefed publicly on the beat in the middle of a Pilates class because my instructor kept making us do these hip thrusty wall exercises. I don't want to accept myself like I accept queefs. I can do better. Similarly, the word esteem makes me think of Jane Austen characters whose very futures hinge on dusty, cinched-in words like decorum and propriety. Now, I love a good Jane Austen character, like any good middle-class white woman raised in evangelical purity culture, but that kind of sexually repressed politeness isn't exactly the energy we're going for here. I want radical self-love, down and dirty, the kind of energy that when your toddler dumps the whole container of Parmesan cheese onto the kitchen floor and then starts eating it, you plop down beside him and eat it too. When in Rome. Basically, I want this kind of self-love, where I am both the woman and the icing. I have inserted a picture here of a woman, my spirit animal, who drops the cake in a driveway, screams, and then sits down and starts eating the icing off the pavement. I want to be a wild woman about my radical self-love, so extreme that it might border on gross. I ache for her, that version of me that can jump into a bathing suit and not worry about my jiggling or swinging when I tell a story with gusto. I see her all the way over at point B while I'm here at point A screaming, "I'm coming for you! Don't do anything interesting in our life until I figure this out. Also, your upper thigh fat is beautiful." But how do we get to point B? I don't know that we ever do. Maybe it's less of a destination and more about the choices we keep making, like choosing to wear the overalls that make me look like a big toe because I love them. What is flattering anyway? Oh, wait, I know. Patriarchy. Or like continuing to choose a lover, even though you hear them blowing up the toilet on the daily. If love is a choice, it would seem that radical self-love is no different. But I keep expecting radical self-love to finally dawn on me one day, and that its transforming power will change me forever, and I will never have to choose it again. But I don't think it works that way. I think it grows the more we choose it. It grows when the world tells us that we're a horrible, queefing loser, and yet that woman, me, I choose not only to accept being her, but to revel in being her. When the world drops her on the ground, I want to be so into her that I would lick her up off the dirty floor so as not to waste one tiny morsel. Here we are, we're back.
So freaking good. And
Thank you,
hearing
friend.
your voice do it, I mean, to me is like, mwah, chef's kiss. Like,
Thank you.
yeah.
It feels good to be writing. It feels good to be reading the narration. It all just feels like, have you ever been like stretching or doing yoga or working out and you hit a certain
No, just
point in
kidding.
your
I'm so sorry.
workout that you go, this kind of feels good? I mean, like there's an element of pain to it anyway. Like anything that causes you to have to move your body or move your mind, there's an element of like difficulty, maybe is a better word than pain, but it also kind of feels good. And you're like, ooh, yeah, that's hitting just right. Like that's what this is for me
Mm,
right now. So, yeah, I just show up and just, I'm responsible for showing up. And that's kind of it. So I
I
love
love
it.
that. That's so
Yeah.
great. So, how does it feel to be writing stuff and putting it out there for people to read and hear?
Yeah, that's a thing because in my mind, always at the back of my mind, and I wonder when this will go away. I think maybe never. But there's this voice that's like, "Who cares what you have to say? Who
Mm.
are you?" And then I find myself sometimes siding with the voice and being like, "Yeah, who are you?" Like who gave you the permission to write something and then think that somebody else would ever be interested in that thing,
Mhm.
you know? Do you feel
Mhm.
like that when you put things out there
Oh
into the
my god.
world?
Yes. In fact, 2 years ago, I put together a Stevie Wonder concert that is like a show, it's not it doesn't have a plot. It's more it's I would say it's like a tribute show, but it's not like someone's Stevie Wonder. It's just the music of Stevie Wonder and a tribute with lines and choreography and all that. And I was really proud of it. I put it together. A theater did it in Boulder. It was a
Nice.
big deal. I produced it, I wrote it, I directed it, I was in it. Um, we recorded it, I got promo for it, and we talked about how we should do it. I had places where I should send the promo and be like, "Let's do it." And last week, I watched it for the very first time.
Whoa, what was that
Okay,
like?
gross. That's so sad. Like, you guys, did you hear that timeline? 2
2 years
years
ago.
ago, I did all this work with amazing people that helped and did the show. We sold out the second night.
Wow.
Uh, and then 2 years later, I listened to it. Have I promoted
Why
it? No. Have I talked to a lot of people about it just in general? Yes. But I was terrified that it wasn't good.
ah, but it sold out, like, the 2nd night.
Well, but Stevie Wonder, of course, people are gonna come hear it.
Oh, okay. So okay, I see
Mhm,
now.
mhm.
So it's all Stevie, it's nothing about how you've put it together or wrote lines or any okay.
Cast everyone and
Did you choreograph it?
I did not, my friend Jessica did most of the choreography. There was, like, blocking stuff that I did, which is just, like, where we stand when, but,
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, it had nothing to do with me, and I think that so, like, yesterday I met with someone who I was hoping might wanna, like, help me promote it, and we'll figure that out, and I'm helping them with their band, which has, like, 100 shows a year. Um, and he was like, you really need to get better at selling yourself." And I'm
Ugh.
and I'm just like, "You don't say." Um, but, like, it is hard. There's so much surrounding actually allowing other people to hear it and acting
Mhm.
like it's good.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a hard thing. But with you, I look at
Mhm.
your writing, I listen to it, it makes me cry. It's so good. And I'm like, my friend is so good. But it is not easy to, especially when you have to like actually sell it
Mhm.
or like put it on social media or any of that stuff.
I
Right.
think that's why we have social media managers and publicists and all of those people because it's not hard typically to sell someone else's things if you believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
But why is it so hard to sell our own things?
And we're at a place now where, like, most of us listening to this podcast, I would guess, don't have an agent and a publicist and,
Right.
like, promoter, none of social media people even.
Mhm.
So I think most of us would probably say that it's like, "Oh, I just don't have that kind of brain," or "I don't have the time," or "I don't whatever," but deep down, isn't a lot of it like, I'm afraid it's not actually good?
Mhm.
Or, like, I don't know how to get out of my own way enough to promote
Mhm.
it? I don't
But
know.
sometimes it's like and, the whole yeah, I have to preface this with saying I'm not trying to sound braggy, which I think we should get to in a second.
Mm.
But, like, sometimes I know my stuff is good, or at least, I'm not even saying the best. I'm not saying the best, I'm saying is good or is something that I am proud to put out into the universe.
Mhm.
And I know that logically, and still it's hard to promote it because it feels like I'm bragging.
Mhm. Oh, well, after I watched this TV show, like, during it, I was crying. I was like, "This is good."
Yeah.
But how does that translate into me, like, how do I feel about putting it out there to, like, what if it's braggy and the person I showed it to or want to book it or want to do whatever with it doesn't think it's good, then I look stupid because
Right.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we feel like it's good? I don't know.
I
If
mean,
it's
I think so. Like, here's the deal. Like, no one I brag on my kids. I'm so proud of them, and I love that they're into the things that they're into, and I love who they are. I love all the things, right? And I kind of don't give a shit if other people are like, "Oh, there's Carrie and she's bragging about her kids." Well, duh, they're my kids. I would expect you to brag about your kids too. Everyone should brag about their kids. Um, it kind of goes without saying, but at the same time, it's like, well, these things that we make, they're our kids.
Mhm.
They're like little creative babies that you send out into the world.
Mhm.
Like, of course we should brag about them. And what is bragging anyway? Can we talk about what's bragging to you? What the hell is this whole concept?
Already love this. What is bragging?
Yeah.
I mean, we've prefaced this so much, it's hard not to be, like, biased, but okay, bragging is being like, "I think this thing that is mine or me
Mhm.
is really great." And we view that as, like, it's always someone outside of us that
Mhm.
they're just so braggy about
Mm.
whatever. Okay, so they are unabashedly talking about something they've made or done
Mhm.
and how great it is.
Is that so bad?
Honestly, I mean, I think, like, the difference between like, celebrities are they I guess they don't brag because they don't have to anymore,
Hmm.
but, like, how do you promote then without
Yeah.
bragging and being like, "This is really good"? And also,
Right.
it doesn't that kind of feel like jealousy? Like, you would
Mm.
say someone's bragging if I think I would say someone's bragging because I'm jealous that they like what they do and I hate what I do.
Oh gosh, yes. So it has everything to do with you and actually is not a reflection on them.
I also think that this is okay, it's gonna get, like, deep here, but when I was a kid, other kids used to be like, "You just think you're so great." all the time, and I really
Mm.
didn't. I had a childlike pride in what I did, but, like,
Mhm.
it was because I practiced a lot, and I sang all the time, and my parents praised me for being good at what I did. I never was like, "I'm great," but I always had this, like, these groups of especially girls that would be like, "You're a hot shot." That was the thing in the
Mm.
90s. Hot shot is like, you think you're just so much better than everyone else. Emily's a hot shot. Um,
Mm.
and I used to constantly be like, "What is it about me that's making these people think that I think this?" So I would try to not like to dim my light about stuff.
Ugh.
'Cause I really didn't think I was bragging. I
Right.
thought I was just living, and people are like, "I think you're so great." Like, I think that exists in female culture, like,
Mhm.
it's that scarcity thing that we've talked about
Mhm.
before, but I do think there's an element to that, and you and I were talking about too, like, the Christian culture we grew up in, right? Like, how do you think that affected your ability to be like, "Hey, I'm proud of this." Like, what do you think?
Right. I think that the Christian evangelical culture that we grew up, in very much focused on you can do nothing in your own strength. You are poop. You are sinful. Your body is dangerous, and the things that you want are gross. You are a flesh pot of iniquity and weird desire.
A flesh
And
pot.
I don't know.
I like that a lot.
Ugh. Um, and the the kind of the balm or the rescuer in all of this that's going to make you holy is Jesus. And he comes in and he cleanses you and he makes you new and fresh and blah, 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 whatever. So like are you doing check yourself, are you doing things in your own strength? Because if you are, that's gross. You need to surrender that. And if you start to get confident or feeling like something that you're doing is really good, you need to check your motivations because I bet it's pride sneaking in.
Mhm.
The sin of pride and everything that comes along with it, which is gross. And especially for females, like I think it was much more okay for men to stand up and be like, look at this thing that I made. Whereas women, we were expected to be things like humble,
Meek.
meek.
Uh-huh, that's the
Bleh. I looked up the definition the other day and it was, I can't remember what it was. Look up the definition of meekness. It's like everything pacifying and quiet and like know your place and be humble and like, you know, and yeah. So
So no,
that's
pride,
where,
I love that you brought that word up because that okay, there's a scripture, you guys, that says in the King James version, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty, like haughty, spirit before a fall. So essentially, being proud and braggy is like you are just waiting to be taken down.
right.
And here's another thing. If like I that has affected me a lot. If you feel confident and good,
Mm,
it's because I've talked about the devil a lot today. It's because the devil has you right where he wants you
mm-hmm.
because people of God who are walking in the spirit face adversity.
Right.
So like if you feel proud of what you've done and you feel like you're getting somewhere and you feel like you could possibly have done something good, that's wrong.
Right.
So like How are we supposed to I mean, I feel like this is not just a phenomenon do 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 within, um,
Phenomenon.
the Christian or, like, fundamentalist, whatever, like, culture. I think this is women, I think this is I'm sure men who have gone through similar things, but heavily in, like, religious female
Mhm.
communities. Um, so then, not only do you have to get through all of that to just make the damn thing, which is what we've been talking about, but
Mhm.
to revel in your accomplishment enough that you could be confident enough to put it out there.
Mhm.
Oh,
And are you when you do put it out there, is it bringing glory to you? Because if it is bringing glory to you, it's
wrong,
gross.
wrong.
It needs to always be pointing back to God all the time, constantly. But what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what that means, Emily. What does that mean? Like, how do I know if I'm bringing the glory to me or if I'm bringing the glory to God? I am one of those people that if someone's like, you guys know who you are, who's been pooping on the toilet seat in the bathroom, even if I'm not the one that pooped on the toilet seat in the bathroom, I'm going to feel bad about it. I always think it's about me.
I've
And
confessed to
so,
things I've never done. Like,
exactly.
I legitimately have convinced myself I did something,
Yes.
and I definitely didn't. That's
Yes.
like, when I was a kid, that happened multiple times.
Yep. So,
Yep.
like, we're screwed because we're always gonna think there was not ever a time in my childhood where I thought, "I'm really happy that all the glory is for God and not for me." I always was like, "Am I doing yes, it's all oh, no, I'm doing it again in my own strength and for my glory," and, like, I was never happy about that part. You know,
Yeah.
I was never assured, I was never confident, I was never anything. Like, in fact, creating was always connected with this, like, kind of high octane anxiety feeling of like,
Mm.
"Oh, no." So, like, it was just easier to just not create because then I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, I made Christian songs so I could have us all sing about how shitty we are and worthless. Speaking of, last episode, if you guys listened, while Carrie was going through all the things, she reposted one of so it was your first you tell the people what that was.
So, okay, so I started Honestly Dear Listener in 2014. It was just me. It was kind of I it was a lot shorter. It was like 15 minutes per episode. It was way more produced than it is now. And I had Emily as my first interview on that show,
Isn't
that
that crazy?
podcast. And so that was I was looking at it was 10 almost 10 years ago exactly, that we did that podcast episode, and so it's really cool to be able to kind of hear how we talked about things back then and how we talk about things
Mm.
now, and then, a year ago, Emily was like, "I wanna do a podcast," and I was like, "I already have a podcast, let's be co-hosts," and she was like, "Okay." So here we are in this kind of reboot of our podcast, but so I included at the end of that episode, I'll link it in the
Which
show
I
notes so you can
love.
go listen to it. Yeah. There is a recording of Emily and I. We're probably 13, maybe.
Mhm. 8th grade, you said,
And
right? So, yeah.
yeah. And I was auditioning to be a part of the worship team at our Christian camp that we went to. And so I had to send in a singing sample of me singing and being able to sing harmony. So I was like, Emily, will you record this song with me? And she was like, okay. So that is what we're doing. That's the audio track you hear at the end of that episode.
Yeah, so I was like I had it stuck in my head today, and because I listened to it twice because that's I'm braggy. I was just like, "This is very special." Um, by the way, if you haven't listened to the first episodes of Honestly Dear Listener that Carrie made, they're amazing. Okay, I digress. At the end of the episode, there's a song called Holiness that we're singing, and I looked up the lyrics today because I was like, I know it's something like take my heart, take my mind, something, something. The words are, so take my mind, oh, something.
And
Take
form
my,
it.
oh, it's like there, it's a word that doesn't match as much, but and then it's like, take my will is the last line. Conform it to yours. To yours, O Lord. Take my heart, transform it. Take my
Mhm.
mind, or take my will, conform it. I
Yep.
was like, "Oh my god." And then I looked at one. Thankfully, my dad and mom, there's a lot of backstory there. We've talked about, thank God they cut this verse. I saw at the end, brokenness. Brokenness is what I long for.
Those are the
Broke
lyrics
the
of another
lyrics
verse.
that was cut in our church.
We never
Brokenness
sang that either.
is what I need. Brokenness, brokenness is what you want from me. And then the
Oh,
chorus back to take my mind and form it.
and
Take
form
my
it, take my wait, take my mind and form it,
take my heart,
heart, transform it, take my
take my
will,
will, conform it
conform
to
it.
yours. And I'm like, God, no matter who you are, that's fucked up. If you're, I mean, you guys, no wonder it is hard to make anything,
Mhm.
to trudge through that process.
Because that's almost like a whole Xing out of what it means to be human. To be human means to be messy and to think things that are not quote unquote godly, and to not only think them, but sometimes to even push into them and explore them
Mm,
because you kind of nothing is off limits in the realm of creativity because that's what makes it creativity,
mhm,
is kind of this openness to and the sensitivity to different things that the universe is sending you.
mm.
So to be like, all this messy humanness I don't want anymore. I just want the mind of God, which is goodness, holiness, purity, all the fruits of the spirit. That's Xing out a whole big chunk of what it means to be a human and being a creator.
Or like, I'm not, the messiness is like celebrated as long as it's pixelizing your identity to conform it to something else. So
Right.
yes, you are messy. You're a piece of shit. Now don't do anything unless it's for this higher power.
Right.
And now I know some of you aren't weren't raised in that culture. I hope you find it fascinating. Um, but I do feel that there is, like, even not to get crazy political, but even in like capitalistic society at large, being, work your job, don't think about stuff, just enjoy
Mhm.
going home and consuming other people's art because we need you and your babies that you're not allowed to decide if you want to be in the workforce. I mean, we are
Mhm.
like, there is this oppressive nature that is like, don't make things, just go work in the factory, go work in the steel mill, go work for someone with a bigger mind than you.
Mhm.
And don't be proud of what you're doing because it's stupid. You know what I mean?
Right. Mhm.
Um, and I've been re-listening to Big Magic, which I just
Ugh,
love so much.
I love
And
okay, I'm gonna put that in the show notes, Big Magic. And especially listen to it because her voice is so good. It's
it's
Elizabeth
so
Gilbert.
true. It's true. And honestly, like, your readings remind me of her, like, truly.
Compliment of compliments.
Wonder of wonder, compliment of compliments, but it's true. Anyway, so she talks about too, it doesn't even have to be that you're trying to be an entrepreneur with your art or your creativity, but celebrating it and
Hmm.
to a degree promoting it, saying like, this is part of my identity. I love
Mhm.
to make this thing. And one of the things she says in the book is that Tom Waits says he used to put a lot of pressure on being a songwriter and he had a hard time with stuff, but then he realized that he was just making jewelry for people's minds,
What an interesting picture.
right?
Jewelry for people's minds. God, I gotta write that down.
And that the stakes weren't that high. And this is it. It's
Yes.
like we're talking about promotion, and I think this connects to the entrepreneurial piece of things. I've been thinking a lot about it with all the coaching stuff and everything,
Mhm.
but also just being able to identify yourself as a maker of things and to
Mhm.
be able to like have some pride in that and to be like I'm just making jewelry for people's minds.
Right?
Like that's so cool.
I do wonder if there is a difference because it seems like bragging can take on different energies, right? So there's an energy that is like, I'm competing with people.
Mm,
And this is, tying into the capitalist stuff you were just talking about. Capitalism thrives on competition.
mm,
Like, that's the point,
mhm,
is to compete. But it makes for kind of a poor energy to create from, that
mhm.
sense of competition or needing to be better than other people. What if Sorry, I just had a brain fart. Give me a second. Um, what if the energy was not the what if instead of competitive bragging, we are able to joyfully brag? Like, so
And
that
share.
the energy at that point, is it even bragging? I don't even know what bragging means anymore. But at that point, the reason for doing something is not for insecurity or to push other people down. Instead, the reason is, like you said, I want to share this with the world. I want to be a conduit that that allows creativity to move and flow through me to other people. And I want to I want to communicate and connect with other people for joy. Like, to
Mhm,
me, that is, we need more of that energy in the world.
mhm. And whether you are a person who's making money from your art or a person who's just simply sharing it,
Mhm.
like finding that joy. I had a vision of like a second grade classroom and people just bringing something they made to the classroom and being like, I made this and this is how like my mind did this
Yeah.
thing, like
Mhm.
it's that's also a much more healthy, I think. That's probably a shitty way to say that, but like joyful and sustainable way to find the motivation to promote yourself
Yes. Yes.
because
For
it's just
sure.
more like, look what my brain did.
Yeah. Yeah. And also thinking about what we make our little babies, and like, give that baby every opportunity it can.
Mm,
You wouldn't be like, "Oh, no, child, stay under this rock." No, if your child is making a thing, I'm singing it from the rooftops. Like,
mhm.
"Look at my child." Like, why aren't we doing that with our stuff?
I love that so freaking much. Okay, so some stuff Carrie and I talk about ahead of time, um, and we just kind of talk about what we're gonna discuss. I I am not joking at all when I'm like thinking about how I want to say this, and I'm all excited about it. I've been thinking about motherhood because we don't talk a lot about
Hmm.
being moms, because we're talking about all the other shit that we're making. But being moms, you are like the ultimate creator.
Mm. Mhm.
um, and so the aspect of having that like joy and pride in your children, we made them. And that is a magical thing. Now your creation is not like something you are. in control of or something. But I just love that I literally wanted to tell you that I want to talk about moms being the ultimate creatives at some point.
Yeah,
Do you guys want to hear about that? Uh but you
it's
were
true.
literally just comparing all this to babies. Like, ah, I just sorry. It's just crazy to me that I have been having this conversation with you in my mind. Um
Mm.
and taking the same pride that we take with our children into that creativity is just such like our creative endeavors is such a beautiful thought. And it is paralleled in the way that once we have this like person or thing that we've created, we don't have a lot of control over what the world is going to do with it.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
We made it, we nurture it, we continue to be proud and push things forward, but ultimately like we don't have control over what it becomes to others.
Yeah.
Ooh!
That's scary, huh?
Yeah, that's
In
a
in
whole
a
nother episode, but
in a lot of ways, it is so much easier and safer to just not make things because, yeah, your things grow legs and they walk around in the world and they'll go and be places that you'll never be. And like you said, that is scary. That's
Mm,
like, that's really scary. But also, like, that's kind of cool. It's kind of neat when we don't have control over things like that Frou Frou song, Let Go. Like, let go, jump in. That whole, oh, I still love that song. But she talks about how there's beauty in that breakdown of letting go.
mm,
And I think that's a beauty that we all kind of like long for in the end, to allow what we make to live outside of us.
mm. And isn't that so much more of a lovely thought to have than I've got to promote my shit. Like,
Yep,
oh, I've got to do this thing. Like,
totally.
I feel like that letting it go is that it is
Mhm.
promotion. It is like, I'm going to release this out there and just be like, okay, that's
Mhm.
it. I got to just let go of what happens with that now,
That's right.
you know?
Also, and what do you think about this? I've kind of been tossing this around in my brain. I know we're talking about like the things we make being like little babies that are so precious to us, and they are. Of course they're precious to us. But like maybe what about not treating the things we make so preciously? And what I mean by that is like I want things to be so perfect when I
Mm,
release them. Like
mm-hmm,
on Substack, I'm like, I want to be able I want every single word to be just pregnant with meaning, and that like you couldn't take anything out. Like you couldn't even X out one word
mm,
because it would just like change it from this perfect poem to an imperfect poem. And like I just keep hearing people throwing around the catchphrase like, don't be so precious about it. Stop being so
mm-hmm,
precious about it. And it's been helpful, this idea that like I can release something that is imperfect and then I just come back and just keep making every single day. And some of that I will release to the public and some of it I won't, but like I it's holding that the two opposing viewpoints at the same time, you know. This
mm-hmm,
thing is the most precious thing to me and it is also I'm not going to be so precious about it.
mm-hmm.
Does
Oh,
that what do you
I like, I really like it. I think I tell my students who are songwriters and singers and I say this with technique with their voices but their songs too. I feel like it's a scale all the time where we're putting a couple rocks and attention over here and the next thing you know we need a couple more over here. And I think
Mm,
what you're describing is exactly that. It's like put a couple rocks over here because you're like, you're my baby and I'm proud of you. And then put a
mhm.
couple rocks over here to be like, it's also fine for you to not be perfect. Like it can be precious
Mm.
because so you can be, like, proud of the fact that you're doing it, but not precious that you lock it indoors and
Mhm.
keep it oh, I mean, if we're going along with this parenting analogy, it's the same. You want to protect your kids, but you also
Mhm.
want them to be in the world, and if you completely protect, they won't be normal people that are able to, like, function. Your art
Totally.
cannot just be locked up. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that's how we end up with either things that no one hears or like tone deaf things entirely because you've locked things so tight and it's like a little echo chamber of art. You've got to
Mhm.
let it go and get out there and be like, "All right,"
So you're
you know?
saying that it's about balance?
Oh no,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
it's the hardest. Balance is so hard. In my therapy sessions, my therapist is constantly like, "Okay, Carrie, it's not one or the other, it's a balance. Finding a balance. That doesn't sound very balanced to me." And I'm like, "Oh, damn you, balance." So yeah, it is. It's balance.
Mhm. Mhm. And that is constantly shifting. We
Mhm.
really and we talked about this recently too. I think it's all of us would love to just say, "Okay, it's equal parts this and this."
Mhm.
The end. That's the recipe. Like, and now it goes over here and we don't have to touch it again. As creatives, figuring out how we feel about different things all the time, it's constant movement. You don't balance it. It's not like a wall that you're like, okay, we put this level on the floor or whatever when you're building a house and you're like, now it's done. The earth is constantly shaking
Mm.
under this and it will be forever. So you have to keep leveling it and keep putting rocks on this side and putting rocks on this side. I'm mixing my metaphors, but y'all understand.
I get it. I get
And
it.
it's so disappointing because we really would just rather be done with it and move on. But
Yeah.
this is how we grow. It's how we
Mhm.
build, and it's always going to be a
Yep.
That's a word.
How do you spell that?
All
So,
right.
I mean, maybe bragging is the wrong word. What do we call it? Self-promotion sounds too clinical.
Mm. I would encourage listeners to do a little deep dive on what it could be that makes you worry about being proud of what you've done.
Mm.
I wish it were as simple as just saying, just be proud.
Mhm.
Be be sweetly braggy. Be like don't be ashamed to self-promote. I wish it were that simple. Um
Totally.
so I would say I encourage us to take a look at maybe what things in our lives, maybe what people um and it's not that them, it's society in general, what people, what experiences like your Christian upbringing or whatever has
Mhm.
taught you that you can't be proud of you.
Mm.
I would take a little look at that.
Yep.
Um, and then say, can I share anyway?
Mhm. Yeah.
Share anyway.
Share. I like that word. Share. Share it with people. I like that.
Ooh, I just thought of one more analogy.
Ooh, tell me.
It's my last one I'll ever have. I'm just kidding.
I hope not.
That would be sad. Um, when you cook something and you're like, I don't think I'm a chef or anything. It's not like everything looks really pretty and there's a little sprig of something on the plate and this is the best food you've ever had. But when someone comes to your house or you're with your family or you're at a bake sale, whatever you've made that you're sharing is good enough to nourish other people
Mm.
and maybe make them want to make something too. So, just like your favorite goulash,
Mm.
we can The word goulash sounds so gross. It's
I
like the
don't
sound of wet macaroni stirring is what I hear,
totally.
like, in that
What the hell is goulash?
any
I
anyway,
really wanna know.
I'll get to that, but I'm saying your, you know, dump cookies, that also sounds gross. I'm thinking of potluck food. That's
Dump
like
cookies.
I'm saying the thing that you make that isn't it's not the best food in the world, but we're bringing something here to this table and we're sharing it with each other.
Mm,
And like
because
there's
food
some
connects people.
yes, and so does art.
Yep.
Goulash, by the way, is noodles and like burger usually and some kind of like sauce. So it's like elbow macaroni. It's basically like spaghetti, but in like a mushier form
Okay.
with like some people make it with like peppers and stuff too. Um, yeah, goulash.
Goulash.
And I just always feel like goulash is a thing that goes at church potlucks. It's
It's
like
the
goo
goo
part.
part of it that
Yep.
gets me.
I mean,
The
I feel
goo.
like that probably is intentional. I don't really know.
I mean, because if it was any other syllable like filosh or prylosh, it'd be different. But goulash?
Prylash sounds like something you take when you can't hold your stools.
Did you take your prylosh?
Ooh, I gotta go. I didn't take my Prylash. But
Yeah.
yeah, goo and losh
Goo.
together is kind of. I actually
Mhm.
think that Jello dish that all the old ladies used to bring to things. That's like
Mhm.
different colors and like some foamy substance, like whipped cream.
Yes,
I
I
feel
do.
like
What is that? A Jello salad?
it should be called goulash.
Goulash. Yeah, totally.
But it's not.
Ugh.
Anyway, friends, share your creative goulash.
Yeah, goo all over us. We
Would you
wanna see it.
that we do not say.
What? Why not? You were talking about sharing. I'm
But
just asking them to share their goo with us.
goo all over us is not the vibe we're
Okay.
going for in
All
this
right.
podcast, I
Okay, I
think.
take it back.
That being said, we do want to see what you're making.
Yeah.
Could you send it to me? And as Carrie says, goo all over us.
Yeah. Spread your goo. Share it.
I am
Share.
not mature enough for this.
I
Okay.
know, neither am I.
Dear listener, we're excited for you to share. See you next week. Come hell or high water.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo!